Hello, and welcome to Look Down There, the show where we talk about all the things we don't talk about. I'm your host, Michelle Amore. Today, my guest is the founder of the Vulva Gallery, an educational platform centered around illustrated vulva portraits, personal stories, and positive community. The aim is to empower individuals and raise awareness around body diversity. Please welcome my guest today, the fabulous vulva illustrator, Hilde Atalanta. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow, what an intro.
Yeah. I prepared a little something for you.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Yeah, so Hilde is joining us today from Amsterdam, which is wonderful. And I have, ever since I started Look Down There, I was like, I have to talk to them. I have to have them on the show. I stumbled on Vulva Gallery a few months ago, and first I was like, why didn't I know about this before? Like, this is amazing. When did you start the Vulva Gallery?
Well, this summer, I'm gonna celebrate the Vulva Gallery's 5th birthday. So that's a milestone. So I started in 2016, end of the summer.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, and yeah.
Yeah, and what inspired you to get into this? Were you an illustrator before, or did the stars align and it was like, I'm illustrating vulvas from here on out?
Kind of, yeah. I started illustrating a little over 5 years ago. So it was like in the winter, just a few months before I started the Vulva Gallery. And I actually started with just creating portraits of people's faces, not their vulvas yet. And that was just in a period between studies and not really knowing what I wanted to do next. And I studied psychology before, so I didn't really study to become an illustrator. And during those studies, I was very interested in becoming like a sex therapist or a couples therapist, or like basically anything sexuality related. And I was attending a lecture where I learned about the huge global rise in labiaplasty surgeries. And the amount of even under 18 girls who have this surgery in order to alter the size of their inner labia to make them smaller, and the fact that most of these surgeries are for cosmetical purposes. And it really struck me that, the amount of people who do this surgery, and also it made me wonder, like, oh, wow, how is this shift happening? And why aren't we just accepting of this body part? So I started to dive into the subject, and I soon realized that there isn't much, like, people don't really talk about this subject. Like right now it's better than 5 years ago, but in 2016 it was not really, and it was not really happening. And I couldn't really find many diversity illustrations or like images. And yeah, it took me a few months until I decided, well, what's not there, I can create. So I decided to start an Instagram account where I wanted to share one illustration a day to show diversity and to perhaps reach that, young person who is doubting their body, and to affirm them, like to let them know that you are in fact normal, and diversity is just natural and good.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the first time that you drew a portrait. Were you working from a photo? Did you know this person personally? How did that work out?
Yeah, so when I started the Vulva Gallery, if you scroll way back to the first illustrations, you're able to see that the illustrations were much more like minimalistic, and I created them based on my own knowledge of anatomy. And after a while, I couldn't really make up more shapes, so I started to look online and started to look for photographs. And I think after like 4 months, the project kind of went viral, and like people are starting to like, we're starting to join conversations. And I think a year in, people started to send me messages to like, hey, I really like this. Can you also paint me? And can I also share my story? And that's like at that moment I thought like, hey, but that's really interesting because, me as a single person, an illustrator, showing diversity and telling you you're good the way you are. I mean, it's a positive message, but I'm just a single person, and who am I to tell you, right? So when you see real people, like their vulvas, like illustrations based on real people, and you hear the story connected to that vulva portrait, and for example, that's a vulva that's really similar to your body, it's so much more like, it's such a strong message, so much stronger than when it's just an illustration. And when you're insecure about the way your vulva looks and someone else shares those insecurities or says like, oh, it took me this and this long to get over it, or this is how I, became more positive towards this body part. It just felt so powerful and such a good step to take the project. So after that, submissions have been coming in like steadily, and right now there's like a waiting line of I think 6 months.
Oh geez.
Yeah. Like every 6 months I'm painting a batch of new vulva portraits, like collecting their stories, and then there's enough for 6 months to go ahead from there.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
Yeah, that's so great how things happen organically like that. And, it took almost a year until someone came to you with their story, which I think is it's such a great pairing to see the photo and then to read the story. Are there any stories that stand out to you in particular that have really moved you over the years?
Oh yeah. I remember the first time that someone emailed me and wrote to me like, I've been so insecure about this body part. Like for years and years, I've been like longing for that labiaplasty surgery. I saved up my money and I was nearly there, good to go, good to do the, snip. And then I found the Vulva Gallery, and I've been scrolling for like a few hours, crying my eyeballs out and realizing that I'm normal. And I canceled my surgery, and you saved me £5,000, or I don't remember how much it was, but it was like, I read that and I was, it was so moving. And so it was such a powerful, like, I have no words. If you receive a message like that and know that, the power of imagery, the power of representation, it's amazing. It's mind blowing. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing such great and powerful and much needed work. That's why I started this show, because I wanted to talk about all those things. And I came from that same place as well. I didn't like my vulva, and I had to work really hard to get to a place where I'm like, yeah, I love it. I'm a fan,
Yeah.
and then just to see your feed, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is great. And it's something that we don't really get to see. If you are a straight woman, you don't really get to see a lot of diversity. You only really see yours or maybe porn, and that's not really a great representation of what's all out there.
Right. Yeah. It's a representation, but depending on which direction you're looking, like you're searching and how deep you're searching, you may or may not find that diversity, that representation you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about your own body image? Like, did this stem from, like, did you have a love for your own body and you wanted to share that? Or was this a way for you to heal through helping others?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think, well, I've definitely had insecurities, and I still do. And they fluctuate. And sometimes I feel really good about my body or certain body parts, and other days I feel really shitty about them and really insecure, especially when I'm comparing myself to people I find beautiful. And you know how that goes.
Yeah, yes,
Um,
absolutely. Confidence is ebbs and flows. It's not like you get there and then you're done.
no.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish it was that easy. But yeah, so I always, like, as a kid, or already I felt like an outstand, like an outstander. Is that the word?
Outsider, yes.
Outsider. And growing up, yeah, as a teenager, there were lots of bodily insecurities, and um, yeah, I knew, like, from my experience, how it can affect your, like, your sex life, your, like, the way you move, how you're able to be intimate with people. And um it wasn't really a deliberate decision to do this project, to do, like, in order to self-heal, definitely not. And like, no, it didn't really evolve from that, like, urge, but it definitely affected me positively as well. To well, interestingly, it went two different ways. Like, I started to appreciate the vulva for all, like, its diversity and all the stories, positive and negative and everything in between connected to it, but also seeing what, like, how vulvas can look. I started to feel like, oh, maybe mine is, like, kind of boring compared to, all those beautiful, like, flowery butterfly kind of, yeah, like, and vulvas with, like, piercings and tattoos and, like, really cool pubic hair, and, like, wow. And, like, it amazed me, and it also made me feel like, yeah, there are so many cool vulvas out there. It's been interesting.
Yeah. So you think it's helped you grow and accept yourself more through this project?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, yeah. At least whenever I doubt myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm still part of diversity, and that's cool. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I know I said this earlier, but confidence isn't something that we just attain and then we have. Like it definitely changes depending on the day, your mood, and you mentioned comparing yourself to others, and that is it's such a prominent thing that's happening, and I think it's happening even more than it used to because of social media.
Yeah.
And we have access to all these people from all over the world that we can compare ourselves to. And not only do we compare our bodies, but we also compare our accomplishments. And we think, oh, well, I should be doing more of this, or how come they're doing more of that? And then it just compounds, compounds, compounds. Do you have any sort of self-care practice when you're feeling those types of feelings in the moment? How to bring yourself out of that?
Yeah, stop comparing is my mantra at certain days where I'm like, oh gosh, in 2 days or something like that, my period is coming. Those are the worst. You're, like, already a bit in your, like, down mood, and you're, like, feeling not full of energy. And then I'm scrolling on my phone, and those are the days that I'm like, okay, wait, what are you doing? Put away that phone. Put on your coat, go outside, go for a walk, listen to a podcast, something that, inspires, and stop comparing, because it's not going to bring you anything. But it's something I need to do consciously, and I need to practice that. But being aware of those patterns is already, like, maybe the most important step to really know, why am I feeling shitty about myself? Oh, because I've been scrolling those Insta accounts of people who are really gorgeous and who, have features that I wish I had, but I don't. Like, that's, for me, that's a toxic kind of behavior. And to realize that pattern, and to be able to put that aside, like, break through it, do something else that's constructive, that's what helps me personally really well.
Yeah, and it's so easy to just mindlessly scroll
Oh yeah.
and like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling bad. I don't know why. Yeah, maybe I should stop this. I think one of the things that empowered me the most was learning about my period and like learning about my cycle and the moods that I would go through. And you're right, right before it drops, it's like, oh, everything's a mess. It's like I'm looking through this filter of, I don't know, it's just cloudy. It's like everything is cloudy.
Everything is cloudy. Everything is like kind of negative. You're bloated. So you're like, oh, I'm so fat. Why doesn't this fit? And you just forget that, it's all the hormonal stuff.
Yeah.
I kind of got into realizing my cycle not too long ago. I think it was like 7 years ago, because I've been on a contraceptive pill for 10 years between my 15th and 25th. And so like during that decade, it was all very like even, like there were no peaks and like highs and lows. And then quitting the pill and like realizing, oh, this is what hormones are. Oh my gosh, this is interesting. Like that ebb and flow, and like being like a couple of times per month being like so full of energy and just wanting to go out and meet people and like go on dates. Like, oh, I think I'm ovulating. This is really cool. This is really interesting. I want sex. Oh, this is just hormone talk. Yeah. It's interesting how you're living through your hormonal cycle in a way.
Yes, I had the same experience. I was on birth control for a long time, probably 18 years, maybe 17 years for a while. And then I got off of it, and same thing. I was like, what is going on? I don't, because when you're on birth control, everything is done for you. You're not really connected to what your body's doing. You're not really aware or present in your body as far as your cycle is concerned. And like our cycle is so important. It's like our natural timing, where like you said, like sometimes it's really good to be creative at this point. It's really good to go out and meet people at this point, and it's really good to recharge at this point. And knowing where you are in your cycle really can impact your whole life, but it can also really empower you to be like, oh, this is what I should be doing right now, because here's where I am. And you can really like maximize your time.
Right. And what I also found interesting is through all the personal stories that people share on the Vulva Gallery is how different our experiences are. Like, it sounds like you have a kind of similar experience, but like cycle related experiences are so different. And it's really, I should do a newsletter about this, actually.
Yes.
Like how diverse the experiences of people around the world are, and how people connect to their cycle or not at all, and just, don't care or don't really listen to their bodies, or are very in tune. Like, it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in doing all of this work, I think it's pretty controversial. I'm wondering if you've had any pushback or resistance from the powers that be.
When I compare it to other creators who work with similar subjects around me, I think it hasn't been that bad. Like, once in the beginning, when I just started the Vulva Gallery on Instagram, one illustration has been removed, and I re-uploaded it, because sharing art of like illustrations or paintings of vulvas, I'm following the guidelines. Like, it's allowed, so it should be fine. And once the account was deactivated for like 24 hours, because it was violating the guidelines, but it wasn't, obviously. So I had to write a letter and say, like, look, this is all educational, and it's about, sexual health education, not sex, like not porn, but education. And then they reinstalled it, and then I got like the blue check mark. And overall, I do sometimes receive negative responses, mostly in the line of like, why are you so obsessed with vulvas? Like, why do you need to show this body part. Like, isn't this private? Isn't this something, you keep for yourself? And you like, we keep it like private parts are private. And then I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. And I do agree that for a lot of people, it is private, and I fully like support your choice to keep your private parts private. But the vulva as a body part in an educational context needs to be openly talked about. And the fact that throughout history it's been hidden and shamed and just used for making babies and like not talking about it in an educational way or an informing way or a pleasure way results in us feeling insecure, not knowing the parts that we have, not knowing what to do with it, not knowing our pleasure, not knowing how to defend ourselves when someone crosses our boundaries, not knowing what to tell the doctor when our vulva itches and not our vagina, or like, all those things, not knowing when something's off because no one taught us, oh, this is a good smell, this is a bad smell, this is good itchy, or this is itchy that goes away, this is itchy that you need to treat. Like all those things, by hiding it, we no, we shouldn't hide it. We should educate and normalize. And sexuality, you can do with it what you want. If you want to flaunt your vulva to all kinds of sex partners, go for it. If you want to keep it for just one person, go for it. But education-wise, we need to talk about it.
Right. And we need to understand that our vulva isn't there for others' pleasure. That we need to own our own pleasure and discover our own body. And I think a lot of our self-worth is wrapped up in that. Like, wrapped up in that validation of let me be sexual with you, but I'm not really connected to my own pleasure, what's happening. And it's like, well, imagine if you were connected to your own pleasure first, and then you shared in an experience with a partner. How amazing that would be.
What a difference that would make, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you have any are there any favorite parts of the vulva?
I mean, the clitoris, obviously.
Well, yeah. Okay. I thought maybe that's what you would say.
Today I shared an illustration of a clitoris next to an illustration of a penis, like the fact that they have just similar parts. And I'm amazed by how many parts are similar, and the fact that it can just get erect. And there's so much that we don't know yet about the clitoris. And I'm like, the more I read about it, the more like I'm very well into the topic, but still I'm learning stuff and creating all the anatomy illustrations. I'm still learning stuff, and the fact that our clitori are so different, and that for some they're very sensitive and for others barely, and some are really large and some are really tiny. And trans men or non-binary folk, people who have like hormone replacement therapy in the form of testosterone, like how clitorises change under the influence of hormones. It's amazing. It's such an amazing organ. And how stimulating yourself like from within in the vagina can stimulate the clitoris. Like, there's so much cool stuff you can do. So definitely I think clitoris is number one. But also just the labia, and the fact that there's so much more to labia than we were taught. Most of us were taught that it's also very innervated, and it also has swelling bodies, or what's that called?
Sweat glands?
No, swelling, like
swelling.
erectile
Yes.
tissue.
Yes.
erectile tissue, and that it also expands and grows well, like when you're getting aroused. And I don't know, pubic hair, that's definitely also a favorite part of. I'm so enthusiastic about about lots of parts.
I love it. Yeah, this is definitely your passion. I don't remember learning anything about any of this growing up. I remember the really kind of sterile clinical diagrams that were really flat. And so that contributed to me being like, oh, something's wrong with me. I thought that I caused my shape. I thought that I ruined myself because I used to masturbate with the bathtub faucet.
Yeah.
And so I totally thought when I got older, I was like, I ruined myself. I
Yeah.
did this to me. And I carried that shame for a long time, not realizing, like, oh, this is just what happens as you get older. And this is how I look. And it's great.
Yeah, it's a very common experience that you've had. Like, it's one that's been shared a lot with me. Like, oh my God, I masturbated this way, and for 10 years I thought like, I made it grow, or I made my clit grow, or I made my labia grow and darken, or like, and that's, the way you felt about your vulva in response or in relation to your masturbation habits, or what's a better word for that?
Yeah,
Um,
that works.
it's just a very good example for what sex shaming does with young kids. Like, okay, let's make them afraid and let's tell them this, like, masturbation will cause I don't know, cancer, so you won't masturbate, or like masturbation will make your labia grow, so you won't masturbate, or like, yeah, or a vulva like that, it means you're not a virgin. Like, it's very effective ways of creating shame and having people just not only feel bad about their bodies, but maybe also not have that kind of sex. Or if only we could implement the actual facts and just make people aware of, well, what happens to your body is due to your genetics and not your masturbation habits.
Right. Yeah. I didn't know that that was a common experience. It was definitely something I carried for a while. And I actually, well, I grew up in a Christian home. And so every time I would do it, I'd be like, I can't do that again. Like I would try not to do it for a few weeks, and then I'd be doing it again. And
Mhm.
like I can't control myself, there was all that religious shame that came along with it as well.
Yeah. I remember the first time I discovered the shower and I was like, oh my God, like, mind blowing. Like, I'm probably the only one who knows this trick, but
I know, yeah.
it's
No,
so good.
I don't really remember how I found it. I would think I was pretty young. Probably would have been maybe 6 or 7. I don't know. But I remember sitting in the bathtub and like looking down and looking at like my clit was pulsing. I didn't know what the hell was happening. I was just like, what's going on? And I told my sister, I was like, hey, you gotta try this. Like, you gotta get in here and do this. I don't know what's happening, but it's fun.
Oh, it's so adorable. But isn't this amazing how young kids are like, oh my God, this is what my body can do. Wow, this is so cool. And there's no connection with it being sex. It's just like, oh, cool tricks. It feels so good. Yay, pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I know how conservative America is surrounding sex and sexuality. Things are changing. I think we can see that. But how are things different in Amsterdam? Do you experience the same kind of conservative mindset around this?
I think if I compare it, as far as I know, with lots of other countries, we're doing pretty okay in the Netherlands. I mean, Amsterdam is the capital, so I would say perhaps Amsterdam is a bit more open-minded, even because a capital city is just different from a countryside in most countries, and I think it's here the same. Like, religious parts of the Netherlands are definitely different with their sexual education, but I think I think in the Netherlands you're obligated as a school to provide sex education. So in that sense, we're already ahead compared to many other countries. But still, it depends on the school. Some progressive schools are very up to date, also with including LGBT and trans experiences in their education. Other schools are very still old fashioned, just teaching about, don't get STIs. This is how not to get pregnant, and this is how procreation works. So it varies. But what I've heard happens in the US, for example, it's very like abstinence only, like don't do it, and if you do it, it's bad, and if you get pregnant, well, that's too bad for you. You're probably gonna have to carry your baby at 16. Like here we have the abortion laws. I mean, they're kind of under pressure, but they still are here. Like we have good health care, and I think we're doing okay, but there's still lots to improve.
Yeah. What do you think about pleasure education coming alongside sex education? Do you think that they should come together for children, or maybe there should be an adult course that comes later in high school? Like, how do you think that the pleasure education should happen?
I think sex education has to happen not just once, not just twice, but yearly. And it has to be customized. Now, I don't know the right word. I'm sorry, my English is sometimes a bit like,
Your English is
it
amazing.
has to be like, thanks. Like you need to match the sex education with the age of the person you're educating. So sex education for a 4-year-old, and yes, for 4-year-olds, it's already a thing you should do. Like sex education for 4-year-olds is totally different than that for a 14-year-old or an 18-year-old. And definitely pleasure can be part of that, but in a totally different way. And consent has to be part of that, and safety and communication and boundaries, but pleasure as well, and anatomy and diversity, and also the mental aspects, and there's so many aspects you can touch upon in a way that is suitable for like age appropriate. And definitely you shouldn't teach 6-year-olds about kink and BDSM, but teenagers that are 17 or 16 can definitely be informed about that in a way that is also age appropriate and educational.
Yeah.
So I think it should be a reoccurring event.
I love that idea. I think a lot of us come to it late because we don't have the tools. And
Right.
really, it's education is so empowering, and education around sexuality and your anatomy is so empowering, and really the pathway to pleasure, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. And I remember when I was about 6 or 7, my mom gave me a book with pictures, and it was a sex education book for young kids with cute comic illustrations, and like really simply put. There were also illustrations of diverse bodies, of like an elderly naked woman and like a young boy, and like how those things differed. And I remember that was so cool. Like, oh my God, this is what. Oh, and when I get older, like this is how the seed meets the egg, and then the baby grows. Like, it's growing older and seeing my body change. Even before receiving that sex education at school, I already had it in my private life at home, like in our family home. And I felt also very wise and educated, and very much not really ashamed about my body because I knew what was happening. So it's definitely empowering to do that.
Yeah, that's such a rare experience too. So I'm glad that you were able to grow up like that, and then share all of that with the world, and doing this great work that you're doing. So what do you see for the Vulva Gallery in the future? What are you working on right now?
Ooh, I'm really working hard on the more in-depth anatomy illustrations. I just started a newsletter last October, where every month I'm touching upon a different subject, and I just started in December a Patreon account, because Instagram is, with all the algorithms and all the guidelines that are changing, and the threat of accounts being taken down, I want to be able to still reach my community in different ways. So with a newsletter or with a Patreon account, being free about what I'm sharing and how deep I want to dive into the subjects. So definitely anatomy, and I'm planning to do the first translation of my book, A Celebration of Vulva Diversity, that I published 2 years ago in spring, like in 1 month, I think it will be 2 years. And I'm planning to do a German translation. So it's not official yet, and you're definitely one of the first ones who's hearing about it. So there's a scoop.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to keep creating the educational materials, and I'm thinking about, like, I've been also doing penis diversity illustrations, and on my other account, just my Hilde Atalanta account on Instagram, I'm now doing a series of butt portraits, together with stories. What's the word I'm looking for?
Accompany?
Yeah?
Accompany?
Accompanied with a story.
Yeah, it's a hard word. Don't worry.
And I would love in the future to create a book that shows different body parts. So vulvas and penises and butts and boobs and bellies, and just talk about diversity in a more child-proof tone, so more aimed at younger kids, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's all related to the Vulva Gallery, but just some more diverse approaches to sexual health education, basically. Yeah.
I love it. I'm excited for all of that. So where can people find you, Hilde?
So I'm on Instagram at the.vulva.gallery, and you can find me on Patreon. I'd love to see you on Patreon. There I'll be sharing more the in-depth illustrations, and I want to have a more interactive conversation as well. So patreon.com/the Vulva Gallery, and as it's an 18+ account, you won't find me by doing the search, the search bar search.
Yes.
And you can subscribe to my newsletter via my website, thevulvagallery.com, and yeah, that's it, I think. Just look for the Vulva Gallery and you'll find it.
Yes, vulvas everywhere. Here we go. Let's do it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Hilde, for joining me today. This is a dream for me. I'm so happy to speak with you, and I'm so happy to see all the work that you're doing, and congratulations on everything that you've done and everything that you are going to do.
Thank you so much. It was really, really fun to talk with you.
Yes, and I will be following and subscribing to you for sure.
Yeah, and to all of you who want to share your story and have your vulva portrait painted, you can send me an email, thevulvagallery@gmail.com, and I'll give you all the info and guidelines. And so you can become part of the gallery as well.
Amazing. Okay. All right, everybody. It's time for you to spread your legs and spread the love. Go ahead and follow the Vulva Gallery and follow us at I Look Down There and me at Michelle L'Amour. Like us, love us, follow, subscribe, all the things. And remember that confidence comes from the bottom up. So grab a mirror and look down there. Until next time.